as you can tell, we are not walking around outside today. It's kind of bad weather again. It's kind of the norm for Fukui in the winter time just to be sort of terrible every single day. So we're just gonna spend the day in the office in the new house. So that's where we are now. I want to talk about a couple things. We're gonna talk about maybe one news-ish story today, and then we're gonna talk about some more personal stuff, I guess, which I hope will in some way be useful to those of you who are planning to move over here in a more long-term capacity. So the first thing I want to talk about actually is I saw this just before when I started getting everything ready for the stream, and sort of maybe decided that maybe I should talk a little bit about some news. And by the way, for those of you who are here, how is the sound? The camera is a little bit further from me than normal in hopes of, I suppose, making it a little bit more interesting to look at. There's not so much in here yet, but there's a little bit. Amazing Adventures, hello, thank you for joining. So yeah, let me know how the sound is and all that kind of thing. I have a feeling, or maybe it's just my feeling only, but it seems like the video might be just slightly blurry. I wonder if the lens is not a little bit foggy, but anyway. Anyhow, so the thing I want to talk about today, and there's a link to this story, to this article down in the description of the video, but is about actually cosplay. Now, I don't want to talk about the particulars of cosplay and how to do it and how to make your own costume. I'm not really interested in that kind of thing. But I've always been somewhat interested in cosplaying, just because it's really quite incredible to see, particularly what amateur people can do with some thread and some material. Just the amazing costumes they can make and go to these cons and just look incredibly professional. I've always just been kind of impressed by it. My own cosplaying experience is sort of limited to dressing up like Anakin Skywalker and waiting in line for the episode 3 premiere when I was in high school, and dressing up like a member of Gryffindor House and going to buy the last Harry Potter book. Andrew, good morning, nice to see you. I've been thinking about you, Andrew. I wonder if you're healthy. I hope you're healthy. And also I've been wondering about your situation in getting over here, considering everything that's sort of been happening as far as closing the borders again to people from foreign countries and that kind of thing. But as for the cosplay, as I say, I kind of have like a respect for it, although I'm not really involved in the community myself. The reason why we're talking about this, and again, this is the article which you can find down in the description, but if you want to pop it open now, I suppose I can pop it into I can pop it into the chat if you guys wanna take a look at it while we talk about it. It is in Japanese, however, just FYI. This is basically a blog post talking about this kind of situation. And basically the idea is that the Japanese government is proposing putting laws into effect that would make it possible to force cosplayers, particularly those who make money from cosplay, to have to pay like licensing fees in order to cosplay the characters that they do in a professional capacity, right? Now, what's interesting about this story, I suppose, and I suppose I should point out that the person that I saw quote this originally, her name is Disa Light on Twitter, and this is actually also her blog article that I linked to. And she is Japanese, and her opinion is that basically this is something that should happen, it seems like. That if you are making money off of these characters, then just as a company who is making toys or something like that, you should be made to pay a licensing fee. And then of course you can keep the rest of the profit for yourself. Now what's interesting about this, and I wish I didn't I closed the window that had her profile open, but I suppose if we search for it here, maybe she'll pop up and I can actually, okay, there she is. And basically what she's saying about this is that there's kind of like a difference in the way people think about property when it comes to pop culture between, for example, the States and, well, basically that half of the globe, right? And how property is sort of thought about in Japan. just even on a small scale, right? To give you an example of how what is the word? Protective people can be of their property. Of course, even now, as anywhere in the world, in Japan, people use pencils in class, right? Uh, there's nothing unusual about that, but what is typical is to actually take and write your last name on your pencil. And you'll see this not only on pencils, you'll also see this, for example, like on the inside of like a boot, or written on a sock, for example, or on an umbrella, that kind of thing. So it's very, very typical to label things so everybody knows whose is what, right? And then, for example, if you do something to a piece of property that is not your own, something you'll hear is like, what are you doing to a person's whatever the good may be, right? Hito no nanika. Right? Hito no kasa ni nani surunda mitaina. Not always that kind of thing, but what are you doing to another person's object, that kind of thing. And tied to the pencil, what's interesting is sometimes what you'll see is I don't know if this is relevant or not, but it's worth talking about, I suppose, is if you sharpen the pencil on both ends, the idea is that you're trying to remove ownership from it, so they call it dorubo kizuri, which means a thief's way of sharpening a pencil, I suppose. But anyway, people think of property in a much more, at least in my opinion, a much more serious way, even if it's just a very small thing. And that's basically what is being talked about by this woman. Her name, again, is Lisa Light on Twitter. And she, basically what she's saying is that for Japanese cosplayers, they do it mostly in kind of, in a capacity as just a fan of the series, and they like dressing up as that character and that kind of thing. And it's only been recently, compared to places like the States, that sort of cosplaying has become anything professional, right? Where now you're having some professional cosplayers come on the scene. But for example, when they make appearance on like late night TV shows or whatever the case may be, they do not use licensed characters. It is always an original character, an original cosplay, that kind of thing. And she says this is because people have an understanding that you don't have the right to just use that, right? And for example, if you get it wrong, or you dress as the character, you do something stupid, then you're sort of damaging the property of another person or another company and that kind of thing. And I suppose the reason why I want to talk about this is because I find it to be a really interesting difference, I think, because thinking about things that are in the public sphere, again, like Harry Potter and Star Wars and things like that, I think my feeling about it, and even so now, is that once they're in the public sphere, they're almost some sort of public property, that kind of thing, right? Now, of course, that doesn't mean that I'm gonna go write and try and sell some Star Wars fan fiction. There is some Star Wars fan fiction that exists somewhere from when I was a much younger fellow, but I'm not gonna try and sell it, right? Because I understand that that would be some sort of a breach, and that I would have to pay for the right to do so, that kind of thing, right? But I do think it's interesting because I don't know if it's everywhere, but at least American people tend to believe that, for example, if I want to dress like a Star Wars character, or for example, I want to buy like a Star Wars item and put it in my video, for example, in the background, then I should be able to do that because it's my right to, right? As long as I put money into it, or I've enjoyed it somehow, then somehow I have some ownership in that thing, and so I should be able to do, to an extent, what I want with that property. So anyway, it's just kind of an interesting thing. I don't know if this will happen or not. Apparently it's just only being discussed quite recently. Again, this person, Lisa Light, her blog post on this was only published on the 23rd of January, so it's a very, very new story, it seems. But I'd be interested to hear, like, what do you guys think about this? Do you think cosplayers should have to pay some kind of fee to particularly pros, to be able to go and dress up like this and get cash from their performance effectively when they go to cons and things like that? So yeah, what do you think? I'm reminded a little bit of like kind of what Nintendo tried to do by saying like, okay, well, what did Nintendo try to do? Basically trying to charge streamers from streaming their games, right? Well, seemingly ignoring the fact that probably those streamers are giving Nintendo a lot of free press by doing so. And I wonder if there's any data on like the connection between how much characters from series are cosplayed to how popular those series get. And I don't know which comes first, right? And probably any of the data that would be available on that would only show a correlation, not causation. But anyhow, so yeah, let me know, guys, in the comments what you feel about that particular topic, I suppose. And I guess we'll end it there. So moving kind of away from the news portion of this, I suppose, I've talked about over the last couple of not just streams but also just normal One Cuppa episodes about transitioning into sort of the next phase in my life and sort of starting a business and moving into a house. And it's been really interesting kind of to quit Japanese apartments. I should have put more drink in this. As I said, now I'm in the office in my new house. And it's been a really interesting thing, right? Because it's like, in the apartment, for example, which I like my apartment, it's too expensive. It's near like a rice field that gives me terrible allergic reactions like on the regular. But I like it. But also I always feel like to an extent I'm walking on eggshells when I'm living there because of course it's not my property. And, you know, should it be the case that I damage something, or for example I want to put a poster on the wall or something like that, then I'm gonna have to pay for that in one way or another, right? Excuse me, there's something on the screen, it's really bothering me. Whereas here, right, basically to an extent I can do whatever I want. Of course other people live here. My family lives here, and so I have to get permission to a certain extent to do certain renovations and that kind of thing, but this space in particular is mine to do with whatever I please, basically. And that's been a really interesting transition. And there's also just been like I don't know, of course there's an increase in comfort coming from knowing that it's my space, right? In the ways that matter, it's mine, I own it. But also it's really nice to have, of course, this space where I can just come in here, I can do some work, I can hang out, I can make a model, whatever I want to do. And there's, you know, I don't know why, but there's different, even when you're not thinking about it consciously, the subconscious notion that, you know, nobody can tell me to do any differently. But also, there's just like some kind of strange transition that's involved here, I think, because I have lived alone mostly since I was 18, I think. Right, so I went to university. I lived in my university town for, I think, a total of like 6 years. Is that right? Yeah, six or 7 years. So after I graduated, I was there for another two or 3 years or something like that. And then I moved back to my folks' house for like a year. I think a year and some change. And then I moved here. So, and lived by myself for almost 6 years, I suppose, so 5.5 years. And, you know, I think it's been a struggle in some way to adjust to living in a home again, and a home that has other people in it, and a home where those other people, you know, have their own ideas about what should be happening and that kind of thing. And also tying that to sort of starting a business and that kind of thing has been like trying to move myself out of the mentality of like I need to decide everything and do everything by myself, right? And of course I'm not a single person anymore. I don't just live by myself anymore. And it's been just like even the small things, like deciding, for example, like business hours for the new business, right? I not only need to concern myself with how that will affect income and how many people how many students I can get and the times that are best for my customers, but also the time that works best as far as how it will allow me to interact and be a part of my family. And so that's been like a really big change is realizing that maybe while I don't need permission for things, I need to state my intentions as opposed to just acting solo, right? Just doing my own thing whenever I want to. And so I don't know. I think one thing that's been really difficult too is that there's sort of an expectation that I'm always going to check with like the monarch isn't quite the way to put it, but the head of the family before I do anything, even if there's no real effect on sort of the family, right? For example, a very, very small thing is it's sort of expected, like before I leave the house, I'm gonna be like, yo, I'm going to do this thing, and I don't necessarily need to say when I'm gonna be back or whatever, but I'm just, you know, I'm popping out. And then when I get back to be like, oh, hey, I'm back. Like, and then that's it, right? Whereas like, when I was living at home with my folks for that year and some change, it was just like, when I wanted to go someplace, I just went, right? And when I wanted to come home, I would just come home. And then when we saw each other, but it's just sort of like an expectation of, I don't know if that's accountability necessarily, but letting people know what you're doing and checking in with them to make sure that what you're doing is not somehow going to affect them adversely, right, I suppose. And for example, like this morning, I walked over to Starbucks and had breakfast and a coffee just because I just wanted to sit with my thoughts and and look at the mountains that you can see through like these great pane windows that this local Starbucks has. And before I went, I checked in and it was like, okay, I'm going over here, maybe I'll be gone for an hour. Do you need anything, and that kind of thing. And sure enough, there was something that I need to do today, because we're like, as part of the move, we're like sort of renovating a lot of places in the house, like rebuilding like the entrance area and that kind of thing. And the reason I did that is because last week I sort of did the same thing, and I made the mistake of not checking in, and by the time I got back, everything was sort of already done, and it was something, had I helped, would have been a lot easier to do. And I got a little bit of flack for that, probably rightfully so. So yeah, that's sort of adjusting to life, not as a single person, and not only as a non-single person, but as somebody who's not living alone, or just as a couple kind of thing, has been at times challenging. It is rewarding to, of course, move into this and get back into this sort of lifestyle, but it's not without its challenges. So anyway, before I just keep blabbering on, I see that there are now 5 or 6 of you kind of hanging out. I saw that Amazing Adventures was here. I think Amazing Adventures, it's maybe your first time I've seen you in the comments, or if I've seen you before, I apologize, but thank you for coming. Andrew Johnson, of course, is here. It's always nice to see you. We have a couple more, so for those of you who are watching, please say hello in the comments so I know who you are. Otherwise, YouTube doesn't really tell me much. So, and sort of in this little break period, I suppose, let's take a couple. If there are any questions, like any general questions at all about anything. We don't really need to stick to anything. That's the glory of these live shows, right? And perhaps the point even. So, yeah. Let's open it up to you guys for a couple minutes here. What up? Yo, what up, Ian? Hey, Ian, how you doing? Ian, or are you what up, Ian, or what up, Ian? Or what Yupian? Tell me about yourself. What brings you here? Are you a long time watcher? Are you first time around kind of thing? Allergies or cold, whatever this is. Software engineer living in Tokyo. Occasionally watch your channel. Thank you for watching. Oh, cool, software engineer. What kind of stuff do you work on usually? A friend of mine was working as a software engineer in Tokyo up until about maybe 3 years ago, I think, and now they work in Silicon Valley, I think. we're not that close. So, indeed. All right, so we have, let's call you Ian, I suppose. Ian is in the comments here. Anybody else want to say hello before we sort of continue on our merry way with my blabbering? Yes, the border restriction thing has been interesting. Work in a large e-commerce company. Cool, okay. Mercari. I don't know. Yeah, Andrew, how did you meet your partner? Long story short, words. I met her uncle at a bar. We became friends. Her uncle passed away. I went to his funeral, met her. Of course, nothing happened at the funeral because that's terrible. But a couple months later, we met each other again, and we're like, oh, hey, I met you at the funeral, which is not the best place to meet somebody, and then things just picked up from there. The family's okay, Andrew. The family's okay. Everyone's healthy here. Luckily, Fukui remains safe. We had like a small spike, large in comparison to normal numbers here in Fukui last week, but everybody's been doing okay. Thank you for asking. How are you doing though? Is the more important question. Are you recovered? And yeah, I want to touch on this talk about the border you mentioned too, Andrew. So, hey, I've been watching your vids since finding your channel in 2016. Always love seeing an upload from you. Good trade. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to see you too as well. 2016. Why did you spend 5 years hanging out here? I mean, I'm of course appreciative of it, but I don't think I could stand myself I can barely stand myself for this long. So, but I appreciate your watching, of course. Doing better. Don't have full muscle strength. I assume that means that you were relatively inactive when you were sick, so you had some muscle atrophy. I got you. All right, guys, then let's go ahead and I suppose carry on here. I do want to sort of take a cue here from Andrew in the comments, who's talking about how. So he's talked about before in the comments, so I think I can talk about this, but planning to move over to Japan in the spring, and up until recently, kind of the borders to Japan had been open again to people moving over here for business, for work, that kind of thing. However, things now are sort of becoming more severe, right, with Tokyo having 1,500 reported cases of COVID a day. Of course, the numbers are almost guaranteed to be higher because of the way that things are being tracked or not tracked and recorded, however you want to look at it. And because of this, of course, now sort of movement has again been limited from foreign countries. What is interesting, I think the last time we talked about this was sort of, we were talking about the fact that the restrictions were aimed only at people who held an international passport, which is to say non-Japanese people were being held to much higher standards than Japanese citizens. And we talked about whether that's good or bad, and we can talk about that more if you're interested. However, this time Japanese citizens are being held to the same standards. If they come back, they have to quarantine, they have to have a PCR test, I think, no later than 72 hours before they come to the country. Roz, what's up, brother? It's great to see you, man. And that kind of thing, right? So, I don't know. It sucks, you know? And what's interesting, and I think before, if you would have flashed me to like a year ago, I think you would see that like I was quite supportive of the Japanese response to COVID, or at least the local response to COVID here in Fukui, because numbers remained relatively low, the impact of Japan was relatively low. However, because of sort of taking their foot off the brake, Japan has now put themselves in a situation where, through things like go-to travel, which we've talked about before, where it's not likely or it's not likely to be a responsible and reasonable option to hold the Olympics, right? So the government has shot themselves in the foot, in my opinion. So one of the things that I'd originally planned to talk about on today's stream, maybe some of you saw it when the original title of the stream was Complaining About Japan, January 2021 version. And my point in titling that was not so that I could complain about Japan, but because I wanted to give a little bit of critique about sort of some of the more recent complaints that are being seen sort of in the immigrant community here. Basically, one of the things that has been instituted as a countermeasure to people not doing what they should be and sort of helping to keep COVID numbers low is to basically strip foreign residents of their resident status if they do not follow COVID guidelines, right? And of course there was a big backlash in the community to this because of course it seems like it seems xenophobic, it seems maybe a little bit racist at first glance, but my opinion on that matter in particular is not one that is too... I can understand why they'd want to do that, right? There needs to be a severe punishment for these things, right? That's why, for example, and I imagine as Raz Al Ghul is saying here in the comments, why in places like the US and the UK things are still so bad is because you can tell people all you want to that they need to wear a mask, they need to stay away from each other, and they need to wash their hands, and whatever the case may be, but they're not going to do it unless there's some sort of severe ramification, which is why I am quite for, in non-emergency situations, if people are outside, to fine them at the very least. And so when it comes to the foreign community here, stripping them of their resident status, of course, is a very, very severe response, right? But I hate to tell you, but of course, this community is not deserving of all of the blame that it gets for the problems that are happening here with Corona, but I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but there are some really bad actors in this community who are, who are not doing anything to help the problem, and if they're not listening, like, what's the worst thing you can do that might make them sort of comply and help the situation? You threaten them with kicking them out of the country, basically, right? So it sucks, it's unfair, but guess what? You can't do that to a Japanese national, right? You can't just be like, well, we're going to strip you of citizenship, right? Because it's just not something that can be done. Of course, you could denationalize somebody, but they're not going to do that, right? Now, what I will say, it doesn't seem like there are equal punishments for Japanese citizens, right? Like, there's no multiple $1,000 fine for being stupid during this time, right? There has been some talk of sort of empowering local governments, state governments, prefectural governments, with the ability to sort of punish people with more strictly if they aren't wearing masks or that kind of thing. But as it stands now, it seems like that's not really going forward. So I can understand the frustration in that sense, but it's just, it just doesn't seem like something to get necessarily upset over. But that's just me, I suppose. Right, so yeah, Raz, you're talking about how the situation in the UK is really bad. Like, I mean, you're in like a hub of the hub of activity in England, right? So, I mean, what does that mean for you as far as like your day to day, man? Like, are you inside every day? Can you? I mean, what does that mean for you as far as like job prospects? As far as like, I mean, of course, your social life, I imagine, is kind of shit, but what does that mean for you professionally? I hope you guys cannot hear the vacuum cleaner because apparently now is a good time to vacuum. Oh hey, VF Forever, what's up? What's your favorite Sega game franchise? Have you ever played Shenmue? What are the odds of rainy walk and talk videos in the future? Thanks. Uh, yeah, so these are good questions. My favorite Sega game. Yeah, that's a good question. There's some games that I really loved when I was a kid. I suppose as far as Sega franchises go, so you can hear it. I apologize for that. I don't know why it had to be now, but anyway, uh, my favorite Sega game. God, that's a good question. As I was saying, I haven't really been too involved in any Sega properties, I think, recently. Although, I suppose maybe the last Sega published game that I played, let's see. Right, yeah, right. Total War. Total War is a Sega franchise, isn't it? So maybe the last thing that I played really, really seriously by Sega was Total War Shogun 2, I think, because I really, really loved that. Spent way too much time in it. But not a franchise, maybe one of my favorite properties or things related to Sega is there's a local game center here, maybe about a 5 or 10 minute walk that way, that is a Sega place. Unfortunately, I think they've sold all their properties, so the name of that's going to be changing soon. But as far as my favorite Sega game, or game that's been on a Sega platform, and this is just becoming purely from nostalgia, is God, what was it called? Maybe this game called like Desert Storm, which was on the Sega Genesis, and you went around and you were in like an Apache helicopter, I think, and just doing war to people who didn't deserve it, which is the American way, basically. I just have nostalgic feelings because my dad used to play it a lot when I was a kid, and of course Sonic. And I really loved the first X-Men game that came out around the same time as the animated series on Genesis. It was terribly difficult, and I think I had to use Game Genie to be able to get to the end, but I really enjoyed that. I have never played Shenmue. I apologize. I know a friend of mine, Jake Knowlton, is a big fan of Shenmue, and but I've never played it. What are the odds of rainy walk and talk videos in the future? The odds are good. When it's rainy, it's fine to sort of walk around and film them, because for example, if it gets really bad, then I can just stop when I'm actually filming them, and I can just do it at a different time. But for example, if I get 5 minutes into a live and then it's too crappy and I just have to stop, it's just sort of like, it's not the same thing, and so I don't want to do that kind of thing. So on a day like today, we're just going to stay inside. But as far as pre-recorded One Cuppas, there will be some of those in the near future, I suppose, particularly in the next month or so, as things start to warm up just a little bit and I get a little bit more free time. I'm going to be showing you guys my new business here, because I will officially be able to use that space as of the 1st of February, so I can show you that and talk about starting that business and everything like that. So that should be good. Raz, so before we had asked Raz, he had mentioned how the UK is in like a bad situation because of COVID, as many places are, and then I asked him sort of like what that meant for him. I'm home all the time, no job, can't do nothing at the moment. With another new strain of virus, they might extend the lockdown to July now. We're still in lockdown. They've been rolling out the vaccine. Yeah, the vaccine is a good thing, right? We're hoping to get it over here sooner than later. The vaccine is being rolled out by urgency, so elderly workers on the front line. My brother, dad got it, waiting for him to get it. I got you, man. Yeah. Kind of the same thing. My mother got it, I think, like within like the first day or two of it being rolled out in the States, because she works in an emergency room, and I don't think I have a lot of medical staff in my family, medical workers in my family, and they've all gotten it. But otherwise, in the States too, everybody's just sort of waiting, including like my grandmother. My grandfather got COVID, unfortunately, but he was non-symptomatic, so that was a good thing. But I think now he's people in his situation are actually getting the vaccine first, because as like you said, it's based on urgency and if there are any other risk factors and that kind of thing, right? So indeed, yeah, it's I mean, what is there to say at this point about it, right? Like I feel like it's always the same, but the only thing I can say is I hope it gets better soon, and I hope your government, as I hope for all governments, is properly taking care of its people in these situations. And for people who can't work and can't get work because of this, I just hope that the government is doing things to help prop you up and get you through this, right? Because that investment will sort of pay off in the long term, of course. So yeah, guys, oh man, I wish there was something else to say about this whole thing, right? But there's just no words that can do anything right now. So I will say that I'm hopeful, given the regime change in the States, that at least the situation will improve over there. That maybe there'll be some more tangible, some more visible leadership that will sort of lead to things improving there. And given this is not meant to be like a yeah, go America, we're the best kind of thing, but given the role of the United States in the world, I hope that if the United States can turn their shit around, then that will mean other places that are in bad situations can also not only be helped, but also turn their shit around too. So I suppose we'll see. How are you feeling with the recent events in American politics? You feel like commenting? Yeah, I mean, I've commented before, and I don't want to shy away from this anymore. Actually, before I made a very sort of aggressive video. I never published it, but it was basically about this. But I suppose to edit that to say that I'm tired of sort of shying away from these topics on this channel because first, I think it's cowardly, and the reason I did it, to be honest, before was that I did not want to sort of politicize this community, because we've had a very positive community since the beginning of this channel. Raz, you've been there since the beginning, so I think you can speak to that. But I'm sort of done with that, because the problem is that when you don't speak about it, that's when these crazy assholes feel empowered and start doing stupid shit. So my thoughts on the regime change are hopeful but realistic, I suppose. I am not a fan. I did not think President Biden was the best choice. If I had my way, I would have liked to see somebody who is more progressive and progressive, first of all, younger. That's not an ageist statement. I just mean younger is important, because it's the same thing as over here, where if you only have like really older people who are in the government, and particularly at the highest echelons of the government, like how do you expect to move forward, right, with people who probably by the way that we function as people are entrenched in very old ideas. And so having said that, I don't think it's possible for the States to find themselves in a worse situation than they were when President Trump was president. At least under this administration. Things, of course, Trump not being president does not mean that there's no longer trouble in America, right? That there's not a lot of issues that need to be resolved and worked on seriously over the next decades and possibly century or more. But suffice it to say that I feel a little bit of hope for the first time, and I'm hoping that I can start to feel even just a little bit proud of the country written on my passport again. That would be great. So I suppose we can leave it at that. But on that note, guys, I suppose I'm gonna sort of start to wind things down there. Thank you very much for joining. I'm never really sure when is the best time to do these, but I'm glad that we had quite a few more people who could get involved in this, doing this on a Sunday morning. than doing it during the week. Maybe we can try to make that a regular thing. Probably in the future, I am going to experiment with either doing these exclusively on Instagram or sort of doing, for example, a Japan-focused stream here on YouTube, and then something that is like just sort of whatever over on Instagram in the future. So keep an eye out for that. Normal videos should resume actually this week now that things are sort of becoming more stable and I'm getting a more stable workflow as far as starting the business and moving and all that kind of thing. And things should be a little bit more stable, is what I'm trying to say. So thank you as always for watching, guys. It's great to see all of you in the comments. Thank you to those of you who haven't commented before for piping up, for chiming in. And please check out my Patreon. Feel free to follow me on Twitter or Instagram. That information is in the description down below. And I will see you all very soon indeed. Raz, I'm glad you're liking it, man. I thought you'd appreciate the stuff that's lined up behind me there. So, by the way, since two of you are are in the comments right now, for those of you on Patreon who are subscribed to like the tier that rewards you with like a gacha a month kind of thing, I will be sending those out at the end of this month, and they should be getting to you hopefully quite quickly, because I can send them privately by a private air company kind of thing. So please look out for those. On that note, thank you guys very much for watching. Please get healthy or stay healthy and remain healthy, and have a very good day or evening, as the case may be. Cheers. Off.